Alright, people. Review of the week time. So, this one could go long. That's what I will say. This one could go long. I will timestamp this video. I will leave timestamps in because I reckon we could be onto a half-hour one. Possibly. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to review. First off, massive shout out to everyone. 17,000 subs. Thank you very much. We're getting there, lads. We are not far off 20k. 20k. Insanity. Absolute insanity. But boy, do we have a lot of boxing to talk about. Oh, it's going to be a busy week. There's going to be a lot to talk about, but we got to talk, as we always do. Whenever we have shows on that were over the course of the weekend, we always talk about them first before we talk about news, fights, etc. So let's start with the BT show that was on in the York Hall. Obviously, this was a Queensberry show. Frank Warren. Every fight ended in a knockout. You don't normally see them. Luke McCormack versus Robin Zamora, I did see. Luke McCormack's second round was a body shot, I believe it was, that dropped Robin Zamora. I was going to call him Robbie Zamora there. Robin Zamora. Yeah, it was a good shot. I seen the first round. Looks good. Luke McCormack, obviously, Pat McCormack's brother, trained by Ben Davison. And yeah, for a pro debut, alright, Zamora's 26 losses. Let's have a look. But what I saw from Luke McCormack seems to have some talent there. He's 28 years old. Yeah, he's not crazy old, but they're probably gonna want to move him quick because of that. Different if he was turning over at, say, 23, 24. So yeah, let's see how he goes. Willie Hutchinson, I did see that was a big knockdown. I know that the referee ended up stopping the fight, but Martin Hubben, I think I say that guy's name, was a big knockdown in the second round. Willie Hutchinson was able to close the show. A lot of the fights on this card were kind of, the guys, for the most part, were supposed to win. The house fighters, for the most part, were meant to win. I'll talk about that one anomaly now in a wee bit. But Moses Atelma, apparently he was only added to this show, I think, last Monday or thereabouts. He fought a guy called Dan Garber. Dan Garber coming into this fight was 6-2. He is 38 years old, the Reaper man. He is from Bradford in Yorkshire. He came into this fight, he was 226, Atelma 241. I mean, the gulf in class, we knew there was going to be a gulf in class there, but it was really apparent there. And I don't want to be too critical because both guys took this fight on reasonably late notice. I know Atelma had been in camp with Tyson Fury, so he was probably a lot more ready than Dan Garber. But Atelma looked sharp, looked quick. The short shots, like the right hooks that he was landing up close, that were really nice and well delivered. The left hands. The referee was right to stop it when he did, because it was just going to end up in a big knockout for Atelma regardless. Dan Garber, there was times there where I was like, oh, referee goes, no, he didn't. He did in the end. First round knockout win for Atelma. Like they said, they just want to keep him active. They want to get him out ideally 7 times this year. So, yeah, look, they're still talking about Tyson. Look, Moses Atelma, even if he won a world title at 22 years old, that's still a massive achievement. So let's see what they do with him. I think he is a precocious talent in the heavyweight division. He really is something to watch. So yeah, I'm not going to say, look, it was the kind of performance you'd expect against the guy who took a fight on 5 days' notice. It really was. Then Chris Burke versus Ashley Lane. Ashley Lane, I don't really know how many superlatives I can say to Ashley Lane. 17 wins, 10 defeats, 2 draws, and he's now British and Commonwealth champion. Ashley Lane, I think it was Joe Stunner who said, if you don't succeed, try again, in his video, and that's Ashley Lane in a nutshell. I mean, it's not often you see a guy go into a fight, a British title fight at that, with over 10 losses, and then fight like the favourite. Yeah, Chris Burke in the first 2 rounds fought like the favourite, did well. But Ashley Lane, you got the impression that he was just not going to be denied. And in round number 6, that onslaught, I mean, he just did not. I was looking at that thinking, he's got to punch himself out. 100% he is going to punch himself out. He didn't. He absolutely didn't. And he got the stoppage. You could see the emotion. You could see what it meant to him. And, it's hard to explain. That British title means so much to so many fighters, because for some fighters that is their world title. That is British and Commonwealth. That is the level they know they're going to get to, and some of them, they're not even expected to get to that. So to pick up and say you were British and Commonwealth champion, there's no shame in that. That's a good achievement. You know, if you retire from your pro career and that's all you've achieved well. You have. You might not have been a world champion, but British and Commonwealth is no mean feat. And someone like Ashley Lane, again, to come in with over 10 losses, and to do that, 33 years old, honestly, like his last loss was in 2012. I wonder, or 2020. I wonder. Yeah, that was on the undercard of Joshua versus Pulev. I was actually thinking it might have been on the Billy Joe Saunders undercard. It wasn't. And he lost that fight, was stopped. Lost to Brad Foster. Lost to Josh Whale. Lost to Dai Davis. There's a blast from the past. Dai Davis, he's a well-known journeyman as well. He's retired years now, but Dai Davis, stopped by Cal Yafai, lost back-to-back fights to, well, not back-to-back, but he lost twice to Josh Whale, lost to Jason Cunningham, draw with Gavin McDonnell. You look at this on paper, and that's not a record of someone you would even envision winning a British title, but he did. Credit to Ashley Lane. Honestly, Frank Warren said he'll look to work with him in the future, and you just like to see that, in boxing. Someone who, as I always say, his losses haven't defined him, and your credit to him. Absolutely credit to Ashley Lane. As for Chris Burke, I'm sure he can come again. He is only 29 years old. I'm sure that there's got to be something left in the tank there, certainly. But yeah, credit to Ashley Lane. Brilliant performance. And yeah, British Commonwealth Bantamweight champion. So fair play to him. Now we get into the Matchroom show. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this show. I really did. We will start with, let's not do it in, sequential order. Let's start with Sandy Ryan, Terry Harper. Sandy Ryan basically just beat the crap out of Terry Harper. That's basically it. She beat the crap out of Terry Harper. Fight was stopped after 4 rounds. There's not much to say. Terry Harper used to fight at, I think it was featherweight. I think when she fought Tasha Jonas, that was down, super featherweight. This was at welterweight. Yeah. Sandy Ryan, relentless. She pretty much beat up Terry Harper over 4 rounds. There's not really much else to talk about in that. Ishmael Davis, Troy Williamson. Williamson has announced subsequently that he's going to, and he missed weight by a couple of pounds. He was 158, very unprofessional. I know he said, listen, if you can't make weight and you've outgrown the weight division, move up, don't be taking fights. He said in hindsight, after he fought Mason Cartwright, that was about 2 years ago. That was on Pro Bellum's first UK show, I believe. He looked bad in that fight. He said that was when he was done at the weight, but he carried on fighting. He fought the likes of Josh Kelly. He fought the likes of Kevin and Jago. He says in hindsight, you shouldn't have stayed at the weight. Okay, we'll move up. Don't be missing weight by that amount. And now he's going up to 160. I like Troy Williams. I do. I do like him. I think he's a good fighter. I think that he's game. He always comes to win. A very good performance by Ishmael Davis. A brilliant performance, I have to say, by him. Looked absolutely fantastic in there. 28 years old, had no real amateur background, and yeah, like Troy Williamson, he's a solid operator. Former British champion, knocked out Ted Cheeseman in devastating fashion a couple of years ago. Haven't seen Ted Cheeseman since, so good performance by him. James Flint, Campbell Hatton. Now, I already done a post-fight review on this, but I'll talk about it here because listen. For me, this was the fight of the night. Not the performance of the night, the fight of the night. This was the most entertaining. I really enjoyed this fight. Campbell Hatton, I have to give credit where credit's due. There were a lot of fighters there who would not have even... There are a lot of fighters who, if they were in the same position as Campbell Hatton was last night, they probably would have capitulated. They probably would have looked for a way out. Campbell Hatton braved it. And when I say that, there are a lot of fighters who wouldn't have had the privileged upbringing Campbell Hatton had, who would have just said, oh no, take me out, or enough's enough. Campbell Hatton fought through. He may not be, in fact he isn't a particularly good fighter, but he definitely has that fighting spirit. He certainly has that. There's definitely no quitting this kid, and credit to him for that. As I said in my post-fight review, it was inevitable that this was going to happen. You look at the matchmaking and you think it's going to be like walking on eggshells matching Campbell Hatton when you see the level he turned over at. And I have to question what's going on in the gym, because Campbell Hatton hasn't, from my eyes, improved at all, really, since he's turned pro. He is a little bit more polished than his pro debut, but, not to the level you'd expect after 3 years. Even if you do have a very limited level, you'd expect something. Very lackluster defense. In terms of defense, it's just not there. There's so many shots he's open to, and shots that you would think that... Okay, look, a lot of top fighters, you look at someone like Dylan White, top heavyweight, a couple of years ago, was always open to the uppercut. But these uppercuts that Campbell Hatton is getting hit with, they're so easy to see coming, and it's the mistakes he's making from a defensive point of view. It needs to be ironed out. Matthew Hatton is obviously his uncle, and I don't know. I wonder, is it that, familial instinct, that it's like, I don't want to see my nephew go into a spar and, get beaten up, so we keep it easy in camp. We try and do things on the pads or on the back, and that's all well and good, but it's in the ring where it counts. And if you're not teaching him these fundamentals and he's going in there, it's only a matter of time before something happens. And again, thank God he's not been matched with punchers, because God knows what might happen if someone like James Flint had punching power. This could have been a real rough night for Campbell Hatton. He says he'll come again. I said in my video that having a name can open doors, and it definitely, look, it has, and it can. It'll do it for a lot of people. But in a sport like boxing, which is a dangerous sport, needless to say, you're going in there and you're getting assaulted. To open these doors and to be constantly put on these platforms and in fights that, you're like a fish out of water, really, in a lot of them. It's not like someone, going and playing darts, Michael Van Gerwen's son, they just let him on the pro tour because he's Michael Van Gerwen's son. He's not really a good dart player. He only throws 50 averages, but look, he's on the big stage, he's playing anyway. He's throwing three darts at the board. No one's hitting him. That's what I mean by that. So, look, let's see what they do with Campbell Hatton. He's talked about, running it back and doing the rematch. And to be honest with you, I think for both guys, that makes the most sense. But I think that if this is Campbell Hatton's level, area level, they need to be... The thing I would not want to see, because I think it'd be very cynical, would be for Campbell Hatton to just take a step down and fight a who's he of just complete cream puffs, and then to maybe look to try and, make money off that name and put him in a big fight, which he will never in a million years win, and say, well, look, he's won his last, 5 fights against whoever, all by knockout. And it's like, that would be real cynical. I don't think Eddie Hearn will do that. I don't think he will. But look, we got to see what happens with this kid. They got to be careful. That's what I will say. And then we get to the main event. Dalton Smith, Jose Zepeda. I can't wax enough lyricals about how impressed I was with Dalton Smith in there. And Jose Zepeda, to his credit, looked very sharp in there. He won a couple of the early rounds. He was landing some good shots on Dalton Smith. But Dalton Smith just looked in control. And you could definitely make the case that, you could have had the fight a draw going into the 5th round. I wouldn't have argued with that. Certainly not. Zepeda was game. He was sharp. Smith, the punches were having an effect. And that body shot was a thing of beauty. It absolutely was. Jose Zepeda has been stopped in the past. Earliest was against Terry Flanagan, but that was an injury. So, yes, it does count. But at the end of the day, it was still an injury. It's not a clean... it wasn't a devastating knockout. It was not a clean knockout, with punches. Regis Prograis, it took 11 rounds. Jose Zepeda has been down in fights like against Baranchek early and been down multiple times, but he has come through to win those fights. Again, whereas this fight right here, Dalton Smith, beautiful body shot, down went Zepeda, great performance. I can't wax enough lyricals about how impressed I was with Dalton Smith in there. His last fight was Sam Maxwell, and again, there's moments in that fight where I was like, okay, Smith's in control, but you look, you think, But this was a very good performance. Very happy with what I seen. And obviously the question now is, and obviously Eddie Hearn, Dalton Smith, they mentioned it, Adam Azim. That is the big question. Adam Azim, Dalton Smith. I want to see that fight next. I've said it since they've talked about that fight. I make Dalton Smith favourite. Now, here's the problem. I'm seeing a lot of people, and I'm not having a go at Adam Azim with this, so don't think I'm having a go at Adam Azim. I'm not. I've seen a lot of people come and say, well, Adam Azim doesn't need to fight Dalton Smith next. Well, why does he not need to fight Dalton Smith next? Because he's not as experienced. Excuse me, he's European champion. And this isn't a WBO European title or an IBF. This is the full EBU European champion. If he's experienced enough to fight for an EBU title, he's experienced enough to defend it against Dalton Smith. That's it. End of. Don't give me he's inexperienced. Well, hang on a minute. Ben Shalom saw an easy European champion. He put him in there for the EBU title. Now he's champion. Now he has obligations as champion. And if he does vacate it, it's going to look very bad on Adam Azim. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to point the finger of blame at Adam Azim. I'm going to point it at Kenny Craig, Ben Shalom. If you've ever seen Little Britain, you'll know what I'm referring to with that one. But that's who I'm going to be pointing it at. Because Ben Shalom history of doing this. He's done this in the past. For whatever reason, when push comes to shove and maybe one of his fighters is going to get matched with a Queensby or a matchroom fighter, he'll say, oh, we're going for a purse bid, he'll go the other way. And there's talk that, Dalton Smith's going, or sorry, not Dalton, but that Adam Azim's going to vacate this title. And again, I'm not having a go at Adam Smith because I think if push came to shove, he would go in there and fight Dalton Smith. I wouldn't be picking him to win, but I would think that Adam Azim, if it was up to him and they said, right, you're fighting Dalton Smith next, right, let's do it. I think he'd do it. I think he'd fight him, 100%. Again, I wouldn't be picking him to win, but I think he'd fight him. Whereas it just seems that Ben, and again, this just looks bad on Ben Shalom. It really does if this happens. For me, you can't use that, oh, well, he's inexperienced. Well, no. He's experienced enough to put him in for the European title. He's experienced enough to defend it. Imagine winning a world title. Imagine Anthony Joshua beat Charles Martin when he beat Charles Martin and became IBF champion. And, it was like, okay, Vladimir Klitschko's your mandatory, vacate. Why would you vacate? Well, he's inexperienced. Why'd you fight for a world title then if he's inexperienced? Oh, well, no. And what did Joshua do? He fought Vladimir Klitschko. Right, got a WBA title. And he was genuinely inexperienced when he fought Vladimir Klitschko, but he was a champion. You're going to go win an EBU title, a European title, which gets you a world ranking. Remember that. Gets you a top 15 ranking. You have to defend it. You're experienced enough to fight for it, experienced enough to defend it. So I'm not taking the inexperienced. And again, not having to go with Adam Azim because, again, I genuinely think if push came to shove, he would take this fight. But his promoter is Ben Shalom. There you go. That is the fights. So let's get into some of the boxing news. So I seen Anthony Joshua. I done a video on it. I seen Anthony Joshua with a Instagram story he had where he was basically teasing that his next fight could be happening sooner rather than later. We had heard Eddie Hearn say that likelihood is we won't really know much until after Fury Usyk and see what happens there, but maybe the ball is rolling for an earlier date potentially. I wouldn't expect to see Joshua out until July or August, to be honest with you, and then maybe a end of year show, maybe in Saudi again. But could he be out possibly in June? Maybe. Who knows? He mentioned they want you to fight X. Who is X? We don't know who X is. I would imagine if we look at the process of elimination, it's not going to be a Deontay Wilder. It's probably not going to be a Zhang. It's not going to be a Filip Hrgovic. It's probably not going to be a Daniel Dubois. Could it be a Frank Sanchez? Could it be a Big Farmer Miller? Genuinely, I'd still watch it. I'd still watch it. Could it be a Dylan White? Could it be a Joseph Parker? I would love to see Joshua in there with some of those. Maybe not Dylan White, just because I just don't think it would be competitive, to be honest. I think Joshua would win that fight pretty easy. But against someone like a Joseph Parker, yeah, I know we've seen it before, 6 years ago. Both guys, different stages of their careers now. It would be interesting to watch. See if Joshua can get rid of Parker. See if the fight can be a bit more competitive. Maybe we'll get a referee who will actually let them fight up close this time. And see how that goes. That would be a real interesting fight. Parker, you could argue, he's in the form of his career. I know he was champion when he fought Anthony Joshua, but he had a fairly lackluster performance against Hughie Fury and against Kajanu. He's coming off the back-to-back wins, good wins. Deontay Wilder and Zhang. And with Anthony Joshua, Joshua has had 4 fights in the last 11 months. He's had Jermaine Franklin. He's had, Hellenius. He's had Oliver Lane and Francis Ngannou. Joseph Parker, he's obviously had more fights as well. I'm not just using those 2 names, but you could argue that over the last year, and it's a very, very valid argument, Parker has fought the better guys. And wasn't Parker? Joshua lost to Alexander Usyk in August 2022. Parker was knocked out by Joe Joyce in September 2022, so they're both on a similar trajectory. They both had to come back. Parker's was coming back from something a little bit more devastating in terms of physically. With Joshua, I think it was just more mental. Obviously, he put everything into that Usyk fight to still lose. So both guys, they've come back. They are riding the crest of a wave. Parker has 2 very good wins. So yeah, why not do it? If that is the person. Because with Parker, I was assuming he would... I didn't even give it much thought. I was thinking it's just going to be the rematch with Zhang. Whereas now it's like, ooh, what could it be? And look, I'd watch the Joshua fight happily. I would be a bit kind of apprehensive just because I was like, oh, it wasn't great the first time, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't be great the second time. I was very off about the Chisora Pulev fight when they announced they were doing a rematch because I was like, oh, good lord, the first fight was pretty crap, but the rematch was brilliant. I was like, brilliant. It was a lot better. It was a hell of a lot better. So that is that. In terms of some of the fights, we're hearing that deal is almost finalized for Deontay Wilder, Zhilei Zhang. And honestly, I cannot even emphasize how excited I am for that fight. Wilder, Zhang, best right hand, best left hand. The one worry I have for that fight is both guys in their respective last fights, they were both against Joseph Parker. Neither fight was a classic. Zhang Parker had its moments, but Wilder Parker just didn't. And I do worry because they're both big punchers, because they both have been down in their careers. Granted, Deontay Wilder more than Zhilei Zhang, because they both know they can hurt one another, because they're both getting up there in age, 40 and 38, like they're not young men anymore in terms of boxing years. I worry that we could have a bit of a pawn chess match, and I worry that Zhang could slow down a while. There is just like, I'm not pulling the trigger. And we could end up with a bit of we could look at this fight and think, on paper, who lands first? Two massive punchers. I'm hoping this doesn't happen, but we may get a bit of a snooze. That's what I'm afraid of with that fight. But if we get, a shootout, yikes. Oh boy, yikes. That's what I got to say on that one. If we end up getting the shootout with those guys. Also, we're hearing that Hrgovic versus Dubois. That for me is a pick'em fight. Because Hrgovic, again, I haven't really been impressed with him over the last, even against some of the journeymen he fought in 2021 and 2020. Not looking in the best of shape, looking a bit sluggish. Against Zhang, a close fight. He had personal issues going on outside of the ring coming into that fight. So I gave him a pass on that one, and Zhang proved to be a lot better than we thought. Dempsey McKean, Mark Demori, there you go. So Daniel Dubois, however, against Usyk, yep, a lot of red flags in that fight. And people always say, Usyk was, I don't know how anyone can look at that fight and say it wasn't a good performance by Usyk. It was a fine performance by Alexander. He looked just the same as always. Daniel Dubois was able to land that shot. Was it low? Was it not? That was his bit of success. And then ultimately Usyk was able to recover and stop Dubois. Dubois came back brilliantly, stopped Jarrell Big Farmer Miller, and he answered a lot of questions in that fight. He's coming into this fight with a lot more confidence. That's clear to see. I like it. I like this fight. The winner, you could say, is pretty much going to get a world title shot. Maybe because it's June 1st. Some would say, I don't think this will happen personally. I think the IBF will let the title stay. It could be for a vacant title, but if Joshua was number 2 ranked, then how could Dubois fight for a vacant title? So, I've heard that, but I don't think it'll be vacant, but I think the winner will likely fight for a vacant title. Against 2, might be Joshua, might be whoever, we don't know. But that's what I got to say on that. And this is all on the June 1st show. I looked at the Day of Reckoning card and I was thinking, how will anyone top this? Seriously, how will anyone top this card? It is phenomenal. And June 1st is it's on course to top it. It's on course to top it by a landslide, country mile. Because there are 2 fights just on the undercard with Beterbiev Bivol main eventing. Like, honestly, and then, just because in case you haven't had enough, Matchroom Queensbury 5v5 weights have been announced. So, heavyweight, Frank Warren gets that pick. Featherweight, Hearn gets that pick. Middleweight, Warren gets that pick. Light heavyweight, Hearn gets that pick. The last one, the number 5, is heavyweight. His Excellency Turki Al Sheikh gets that one. And I already did a video on that where I talked about some of the potential fights they could have. Heavyweight, I would expect, I would like to see a Telma versus Johnny Fisher. I'd like to see that fight because just they're 2 up-and-coming prospects. Why not? I wouldn't be shocked if they did Joe Joyce Justice Hooney. And for Joe Joyce, that fight, honestly, I would be taking Joe Joyce in that fight. I would make Joe Joyce favourite. I know he didn't look good last time around, but I Justice Uni has done literally nothing for me since I've seen him. So I would make Joe Joyce favourite in that fight. I know there's a lot of risk involved. You lose to Justice Uni. I mean, it really is. Where do you go from there? But I would take it. Light heavy. You see, here's the thing. We're hearing a lot about Yard Boazzi, and I've already touched on this briefly, but Yard Boazzi is like, well, Yard, with the exception of Parker and Willie Hutchinson, who, no offence, but they're not on Yard's level, nor do I think they ever will be. So to put them in against the Callum Smith or a Spider Richards, I think that's a guaranteed slam dunk win for her and Team Retro. I could be proven wrong with that if they do put them in, but yeah, I think that's a win for Eddie Hearn. And for featherweight, Ball versus Ford, that's a really good fight. It's a really, really good fight. I'd love to see that fight. Middleweight, Hamza Shearers versus Amo Williams, because again, I just think Felix Cash, I wouldn't trust them. And that fight's brilliant. I think Hamza Shearers is absolutely fantastic. He's so impressive. He really, truly is. Press conference for this will be coming in the next few weeks in London. So let's wait and see. I hope to attend that press conference, to be honest, which I really do. I genuinely hope to attend it. Let's see when it's announced. What else is there in the news? Because I think that's the majority of the news, to be honest. Oh, yeah, I have seen this. David Benavidez calling for His Excellence Turki Al-Sheikh to help make the Canelo fight, because obviously Canelo was pricing himself out. He's pricing himself out. Turki Al-Sheikh apparently wants to make Benavidez versus the winner of Beterbiev Bivol. He did originally, I think, want the winner to fight Jay Apataya, but now it's going to be the winner of Beterbiev Bivol against Dave Benavidez. So I still like that fight. Could you imagine? Could you imagine Beterbiev Benavidez? If Beterbiev wins, that would be that would be something, lads. That really would be something, lads. And even Beterbiev versus Bivol, that could be something, lads. It really would. I would listen. I still want to see Beterbiev, or not. I still want to see Benavidez versus Canelo. And Canelo looking for 100 to 200 mil. No. I'm not letting him away with pricing himself. I want Canelo is WBA, WBC, WBO, IBF, undisputed super middleweight champion. He's your mandatory. Like I said with Azim, you've got your title. He's your mandatory. Defend it. If you don't want to, throw that belt like Hrgovic in the trash. Eddie Hearn has declared that he still expects Joshua versus Wilder to still happen before the end of their careers. AJ still wants that fight before he retires. I think Wilder will come again. Yeah, look, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very flipping difficult for Deontay Wilder to come again after that performance. It's not to say he can't. A win over Zhang, we could see something there. But Joshua Wilder, I think that Joe Parker performance really did take the appeal off that fight. I would still watch it though. I would. Especially if Wilder was looking devastating again, which you never know. But I think that's lost a good bit of appeal, that fight. But look, you never know. What else is there? Joshua Boazzi, Anthony Yarden, the same show as Bill and Smith versus Riakporhe. Do you know what I've noticed? And this has been prevalent more so this year. Since those Saudi shows have been going, even Sky have upped the ante with some of their shows. The shows we're seeing, Eddie Hearn, Shalom, Warren, they're getting better and better and better. At least for me, from watching, they are getting better. More entertaining, some really good fights there. So, look, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing, quite frankly. And I think that I genuinely believe it's the Saudis' involvement. Them doing those shows is kind of making Hearn and Warren and even Shalom, even though he's not really involved in it, they're saying, right, let's put on some good shows. Because obviously this week we have Fraser Clarke versus Fabio Wardley, a fight that I need to do a preview for because I am greatly looking forward to that fight. And the card itself don't look too bad. Florian Marku, Chris Congo, looking forward to that one. Callum Simpson versus Dula Mbaba, I think it's how you say that guy's name. Tasmania. And Vidal Riley, Michaela Wah, Alan Babbage versus Steve Robinson, Ben Whittaker. You know, for Sky shows, and I've critiqued Ben Shalom plenty on here, this is a really good show. This is a really good show. Every fighter you see on there, you want to watch. And you want to see how they do. Ben Whittaker as well. I like watching Ben Whittaker. I do have to say. I like watching Ben Whittaker. Alan Babbage. Always like watching Alan Babbage. He's in there against Steve Robinson, Vidal Riley, Michaela Wall, Callum Simpson. I've been impressed by him. He looks all right. Florian Marku. Always like watching Florian Marku. Main event. Great main event. I think that card there is... I might even say it's the best card on paper I've seen. On paper, not to say it will be, but on paper, since Ben Shalom started with Sky nearly 3 years ago, it's the best show I've seen on paper. Because it's got some good fights in it, competitive fights, and some good names as well. So I'm happy to watch that. Let's go. Let's go this Saturday. I won't be doing a watch along. I won't do a watch along. I'm just going to watch it as it is. So I won't be doing a live watch along for it, but I'll watch it as is. And yeah, I'm expecting a good night of boxing. I really am. Hope the O2 is as close to full as can be. I don't think it will be, unfortunately, but could be wrong. Let's wait and see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Lads, again, thank you so much. 17k. I hope everyone has a great week. It's a short week this week. We're obviously off on the Friday, or at least I am, in work. And obviously we're off on the Monday as well for Easter. So a great way to spend the Easter weekend, you know. I think there's racing on next week in Japan. Harsh day today. Because obviously, I will admit it, I'm a Verstappen fanboy. So seeing what happened today was not nice. So he'll win. He'll win in Japan. He'll win in Japan. The dart's on next week as well. European Tour. Plenty of good boxing, and loads of good boxing over the course of next weekend. So it's going to be a fun Easter weekend. It's going to be a fun Easter weekend. Lots of sports. I love sports, as you know. One of my, probably the main passion in life for me is sport. I love sport. All sports. So yeah, it's going to be a great weekend next weekend of sport. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button. Peace.